Welcome once again to our series, A Journey to Continuous Delivery, a series hosted by Gav and Ehab of Harrington Star Technology Consulting. Today we have Gav in the studio who's going to talk to us more about the tools we use in continuous delivery. So Gav, welcome.
Thanks, Nadia. It's great to be back. It's so hot out there.
Yes.
Wimbledon season, football's on, makes me happy. The other thing that makes me happy are tools. Talking about tools makes me happy, but not drills and saws and electric tools like that.
So, how about you tell us a little bit more about what kind of tools you want to be talking about?
So, techie tools, really. The techie tools, the stuff you can code in. Technology keeps moving at a breakneck speed, and it's hard to keep up with new tools because they're evolving all the time. So, for today's interview, I'd like to talk about the processes and touch on the tool names that we use out there. But here at HSTC, we're quite tool agnostic. We don't really recommend any particular tool or vendor because our ethos has always used the pyramid model where we put people, then culture, then process above everything else, and finally the tools, because it's not the tools that are going to make the things happen, it's going to be the people around them. While the tools are vital and at the heart of continuous delivery, when we work with clients we want to use the tools they're using and only suggest tools when we're required for alternatives. So only provide benefits to individual tools if asked.
Right, so let's talk about those specific tools. What benefit do tools provide to the continuous delivery process?
So tools automate all the mundane stuff, from creating a build, deploying a build, testing around that build, releasing that build out into the wild, and then informing people that a build's been done, it's complete, and you can carry on working. And the final piece, which isn't really continuous delivery, but it's the monitoring, and we have to include that because there are tools that we use. But there's the monitoring aspect as well, because it's part of the enterprise nevertheless. So if we look at the tool pipeline, in our DevOps pipeline we've got like a figure of 8, and if we place it horizontally, figure of 8 includes 8 pieces, which is plan, code, build, test, release, deploy, operate, and monitor. And a few of those scenarios include where analysts have to write their stories and they use a tool called Jira, or they can use something like Jira. Ops would need to create dev machines with the same sort of IDE and the same environment, so we'd need tooling around that. We'd have to have developers that need tools for version controlling, for their code repositories, for checking their code in. Testers would need to automate the testing process and make sure that they're not repeating the wheel, so we'd need tools around that. And then the release guys would need some kind of tools to package everything up and then push it out there. So, and then as I said earlier, the final piece is monitoring. So, once it's out there, we continue monitoring. And then we go again because it's continuous delivery, so we're delivering out all the time.
So we need quite a few tools to seamlessly do this. Perhaps you could go through exactly what those specific tools are?
Sure, we can sort of break down into specifics. If we look at the very beginning, we've got plan and collaboration tools. So we use tools such as Jira by Atlassian, and in Jira the analysts would create their stories and they'd put them in there. It's to provide transparency to stakeholders and participants so everyone can see where their stories are in the process. We have other tools as well for collaboration, such as Slack. With Slack you can use it on your mobile. It's like Messenger, but with them you can use hashtags and you can kick off a build within Slack so that the rest of the team knows that you're doing a build or you're running some tests, so everyone within a kind of a Messenger environment can see what kind of work you're up to. And then we've got things like configuration management tools, and they are used to configure environments and ensuring that everything is the same, so it's to achieve consistency at scale. These tools manage and track the application and the infrastructure and ensure that configurations are in a known state, and we know that it's a nice clean environment that we're going to be able to code against and test against. We'd use something like Ansible, Puppet, Chef or Salt for doing our configuration management. And then we've got things like coding tools. So coding tools are what the developers would use to write their code up in. So you can't really use something like Notepad or a text editor. You need something more powerful. And we would suggest something like Eclipse if you're in Java, or Visual Studio if you're using C#. There's NetBeans, IntelliJ, Xcode if you're going to do some iOS applications. So each of these IDEs is quite fit for the language you're using. Once we've coded up the code that we need to check it in somewhere, and that's where source control tools come in. Source control is where you check your code in. It's a bit like Dropbox, but it's a bit more powerful, where we can branch the code, we can merge the code, and here we'd use something like GitHub, Bitbucket, Subversion, and Project Locker as some examples. And then I guess the next phase is continuous integration, so we can put them into our source control repository, and we need to merge everything together. And these can provide immediate feedback for regularly merging, and we'd use something like Jenkins again, or Bamboo, or TeamCity for things like this. And I guess once you've got your code into the code repository and it's integrated and it's ready to go out there, we need to test against it, and this is where the testing phase comes in, and we'd use automated tools. So throughout the whole of the continuous delivery cycle, we're continuously using tools, and at this phase they're automated testing tools. So we'd run something like Telerik, QTP, WebDriver, JMeter, all the tools that testers would use to ensure that everything that has been developed is being tested and testable and tested against. And no doubt once we've done the testing phase, there'll be issues. So then we go on to issue tracking tools, and with the issue tracking tools, we'd write our defects inside one of these tools, and the developer who gets assigned it will then go back and try and amend their code and try and ensure that it's working again. Tools here would be Jira, Zendesk, Bugzilla. So we've got these kind of tools for automated test issue defect tracking. Deployment tools, so we need to get this stuff out there. So deployment tools simplify the automation of deploying applications and services and databases, whether on-premise or in the cloud. And here now we'd use Bamboo, TeamCity, DB Deploy, Octopus Deploy. So we've got experience of all of these over at Harrington Star Tech Consulting. And then, as I mentioned earlier, not quite strictly part of the continuous delivery lifecycle, but we still have to monitor. We have to ensure when we're monitoring out there that we're checking the health status and the status of all our servers, whether we've run out of memory, things like that. Over here we'd use quite popular ones are Nagios, SolarWinds and Zabbix.
There are so many tools. What considerations do we have to have?
Oh, yeah, so with tools come lots of things to worry about. So with great power comes great responsibility. And when choosing so many tools, we need to think of things like budgets. You know, can we afford to blow the budget and buy lots of tools out there, or can we make do with open source tools which are a lot cheaper? Are they fit for purpose? If they are, we don't need to blow the budget out there. Features is another area, I guess. Is the tool flexible enough? Does it have plugins that we can download and use? So things like, you know, code quality metrics and things on top of Jira, if that helps. Does it easily integrate with whether we're using on-premise or the cloud? Does it easily integrate with AWS or Azure? So we need to take all these considerations into account, but we also need to ensure that the team has the technical experience of implementing these tools, because there's no point buying all these tools if the team's unable to make use of them.
Great. So how do you choose a tool?
So with so many of them, it's got to be fit for purpose. Sometimes it'll be dictated by the organisational policy, by the architects, by licensing. Other times the team will be able to implement and decide. Over at HSTC, as I said, we try and steer away from recommending tools. We can if asked, but we'll try and work with the clients to use what they've got at the time, and if needed, we'll recommend.
Great. So Gav, do you have any final words?
Yeah, sure. So I guess to recap, as long as the tools automate as much as possible, give us fast feedback, and change what's needed, and they're easy to use and maintain, we can step into a continuous way of working with relative ease. Tools should be fit for purpose and not any more, really. Otherwise, we don't want to have tools for tools' sake, and we really need to be a slick operation, not adding cogs to an existing big machine.
Great. Thank you very much, Gav. That was very
Thanks,
informative. Please do join us again on our journey to continuous delivery, and please contact Gav if you have any specific questions you'd like him to answer in the next session. Thank you very much. Thanks,
Nadia.
Gav.
Thanks.
Cheers.
See you next week.